All right, so let's jump into today's topic. Today we're talking about cannabis and seniors. And this is something we've never brought to you before. And it comes from curiosity on my side because I have a 91-year-old mama who has chronic pain, always in pain. I also had my sweet, sweet Mimi, my grandma, who lived with us when she was passing away of cancer, whose doctor had suggested she try some sort of cannabis, marijuana derivative. And at the time, back in 1980, it was not mainstream. It was not legal. And she said, oh my, I don't do drugs. So she did not go for that. But I feel like it really could have helped her. And we're going to learn a lot more today from these two experts. So without further ado, we're going to start digging into cannabis, hemp, THC, and what they are and what they're not. And I'm just really interested. And I've got a bunch of friends saying, tell me what you learned today. So, and by the way, these are always videoed. So hello to our great videographer back there with Denoise Videos. All the videos from the past, I think, 2.5 years are on the website. So if you ever want to go back, you want to re-look at something that you kind of forgot about or maybe you missed, you can go back and revisit that. So let's get going and ask Allie to introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Allie Stoddard. I live in this community, grew up on the East Coast, went to Cal, was a Division I swimmer, played rugby, still play soccer today, went into medicine. By the way, all that sports stuff, I have a lot of pain and inflammation. So, but I went into medicine, and my background is orthopedics and pain management. I was in the operating room as a surgical consultant to the surgeons, and I've worked a ton with medical devices, spine surgery, all different types of orthopedic surgery, and then went into wound healing. So in 2015, some physicians' offices that I was selling to, the staff was like, can you put cannabis in that pain cream you're selling from the compounding pharmacy? And I went, no, to myself. And then I got into plant-based medicine at that point because people kept asking me about marijuana. I'm like, what the heck is marijuana? That's what you smoke, isn't it? So I got into plant medicine in 2015, and there's where I got into marijuana, and then hemp, and then food as medicine. So I do a lot of nutritional counseling as well as medical counseling. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, it's all education. I have to constantly give my disclaimer. I don't diagnose, prevent, cure, or treat because I'm not a medical professional. But I love to learn about the human body, and that's where my passion is the closer we are to the plant and the earth and the ocean, the healthier we are as a society. So, thank you.
Nice. Well, thank you for being here. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Tim, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I currently work for a large cannabis company in San Jose right now. I'm going to be, actually, just to be transparent, I'll be leaving there at the end of the month to be moving up to Portland, Oregon, where, and currently at that company, part of my job is doing consultations for customers who are looking for answers to what kind of products they should be using for their needs. So I've been doing that for about 3 years. There, and I intend to continue doing that on a personal and independent basis when I'm up in Portland, and I can do all of that online as well as what Allie does as well. So, so I'm looking forward to that change in my life. But my background is my dad was a doctor, old family physician. He used to deliver babies and fix broken arms and do all of that, house calls and all the rest. So I was surrounded by medicine all of my life. So I've always been interested in it. Just unfortunately, going to school to become a doctor was way more than I was anticipating. So I just continued to study health and wellness in all different aspects all of my life. And what turned me towards learning about cannabis was when my adult niece was diagnosed, who actually lived in the area, was diagnosed with a glioblastoma, a midbrain brain tumor. And her radiologist, oncologist at UCSF told her to take a tincture of THC oil an hour before her radiation treatment, which she hated. She got very high from it. She felt uncomfortable. She couldn't walk well. Her sister had to help her into the clinic to get the radiation therapy. But when she told us about that she was doing that, I thought, why would they tell her to do that? And so I started looking into it and found that it is a deep rabbit hole of learning about cannabis and medicine. And it drew me down this path to learn more about it. So for my niece, she ended up getting those treatments, hated cannabis, didn't want to touch it ever again. Most glioblastoma patients usually have a life expectancy after being diagnosed of about 1.5 years or so, sometimes a little longer, sometimes less. She was with us for 6 years. Now, I can't say that was all because of that radiation therapy and the cannabis being used for that, but it gave, I think, credence to the idea that there is something to it. And of course, the more we learn about it, there's all types of information out there and research that's been done. In fact, cannabis is, and we'll bring it up, that cannabis is the most researched medicine, compared to any other pharmaceutical. So it's amazing and true. So I've studied ever since that time with my niece and learning about it. I've delved into it. I actually joined up with the company that Allie worked for originally, Octavia Wellness, which is no longer in business because actually my company ended up buying it. But I learned a lot from Allie and her team while there, and then since then I've just learned on my own as well. So it's a super gratifying thing for me to do. I feel like I'm giving hope and relief for folks in all ages and groups, and I continue to do that for the rest of my life. So.
Could you get your mic a little closer to your mouth?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure, will do. Sure, yeah.
Literally, there you go.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask, is everybody hearing Tim okay? Because sometimes we tend to talk too quietly or too quickly. So we'll try to slow it down. And I apologize, I should introduce myself to the newbies. I'm Dayna Wilson. I am the host and the moderator and the founder of this series. I'm a seniors real estate specialist and certified senior housing professional. I got my license in California in 2006. Prior to that, I had my securities licenses, 7 and 63, and was working with high net worth investors that were accessing shopping centers and office towers and the like nationwide. But this came together because I was helping with lunch and learns at my church, and then I was involved with the La Miranda, Walnut Creek, and Clayton villages, starting their monthly lunch and learns. And then I thought, I know some awesome people. I think I could do this better. So I started this seminar series as well. So now the newbies know who I am. They're probably wondering, who's that lady up there doing all the talking? So my basic initial question, Allie, is what is CBD? What is it?
So CBD is a plant molecule, and it stands for cannabidiol, or 2-arachidonyl glycerol. I mean, there's a lot of big words to CBD and this system we have in our body. So you're all familiar with the respiratory system, or your hormones, which is your endocrine system, or your nervous system, which is your nerves. Well, there's also a system in our body called the endocannabinoid system. Cannabinoids are a whole branch of medicine, but cannabinoids are things like CBD, THC, and then 130 or 40 other cannabinoids out there. So it's a branch of these molecules that do a whole lot of things in our body. So CBD is a molecule that we produce in the body. We actually make CBD and a THC-like molecule. And almost the exact same molecule is found in the plant, the cannabis plant. okay? So you can get CBD, this molecule, from the marijuana plant. That's a plant that has THC and CBD. THC is the cannabinoid that gets you high, or that has a psychoactive effect in the brain. So we have THC receptors in the brain. We've got CBD receptors in our gut, or the immune cells, and a lot of the peripheral cells. And we've got this endocannabinoid system that makes CBD. So it's a lot of science. Most of our Western medicine doctors don't learn this science. They don't learn about the endocannabinoid system. So they're very unfamiliar with how CBD works. But it's actually a plant molecule. You can find it in the marijuana plant. If you go to the dispensary and you get a CBD product, that's from the marijuana plant. It has to, by law, have some THC in it. If you go online or to CVS or to my website, you have CBD from the hemp plant. And the hemp plant has no or very little THC. By law, whatever I sell or CVS sells has to have 0.3% THC or less. So the hemp plant has CBD in it, the marijuana plant has CBD in it, and the pharmaceutical companies are madly trying to replicate the plant CBD, but they can't because the FDA will only approve a synthetic, man-made, artificial molecule that is a single molecule. And so the pharmaceutical companies are kind of, their hands are kind of tied because they cannot patent a plant, okay? So this plant, which has been vilified for 100 years, is actually really healthy for us, and you'll learn more as we go on. But the CBD molecule is basically a plant superfood. And when it goes into the body, it creates a whole lot of benefit. So we'll go into that a little later. Is that?
Yeah. And I know, Allie's both of these guys can get really technical. So what I want you to do is be writing down your questions, because we're going to save time at the end for your questions. So kind of keep track of what comes through if you're like me, you forget, what was I going to ask? So write it down and we'll get to your questions at the end. How about that? I'm stumped and stunned. If we have this system already in our bodies, how could our physicians not know about it?
Well, it was only discovered, like last year, they discovered yet another system in our body. So the more we learn about the human body and its amazing complexities, the more things come up. But Dr. Meshulam in the 60s is this wonderful Israeli doctor who decided as a young man to do research on THC and why is it an anti-inflammatory? Why does it help pain? And he was the first one to find the THC molecule. And then in 1990, I think 2 or 6, they found the endocannabinoid system because they found what that THC attached to the receptor in the body. So they found this whole receptor system in our body in the 90s. But the pharmaceutical companies cannot patent a plant and they cannot produce it, so they're not going to teach our doctors about this system. And today, our Western medicine system is taught by the pharmaceutical companies. Right? Data, research, clinical studies are supported by multi-billion-dollar companies, not by Allie Stoddard, who's, I don't have the money to go do a double-blinded randomized controlled study. So homeopathy or plant medicine has had a hard time coming up with studies, but Anyway, I digress, so go ahead.
No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. So I think you answered this already. Is there anything else that we should know about comparing CBD to THC? I know you did get into that a little bit. Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, when it comes to the THC and CBD, which is the combination of the two, really are a valuable combination. So even the small amount of THC that you'll find in hemp, and which, by the way, that 0.3% amount of THC that's allowable in a hemp-based product is actually a made-up number that a couple of I forget if they were researchers or what, but they just threw the number out just arbitrarily. And for some reason, our government has latched onto that as the number to use.
Yeah.
But in fact, it could be a much higher number and still not have any kind of euphoric effect for you if that's a concern for you. And for some people that is, I understand that.
Yeah.
But the important thing to know is, and it's a shame too, that 0.3% means that a lot of hemp growers, they grow huge plots of the plant, and if they find out that they test it and they have too much THC in it by just even a 0.% higher, they have to destroy, I mean, there's a certain limit, I think a couple of percentage points, but they have to destroy the whole crop, which is just a shame. So there's a lot of nonsensical thinking going on with our government and our lawmakers, unfortunately, and a lot of it is influenced by the amount of lobbying by the pharmaceutical companies that is really hampering the ability for us to be able to get that information out to everyone, not just us, but the public in general. So there's a lot of tragic aspects to the fact that cannabis isn't more widely understood and more widely educated to our doctors. So I go to Kaiser, by the way, and I asked my general practitioner about using CBD. I didn't even talk about THC at all, and she says, "Oh no, CBD is we cannot recommend that at all. There's problems with it," and she wouldn't go into it to any depth at all. But she obviously was told that the line of their company line is no CBD for you guys, so let alone THC. So. But just to say, the combination of THC and CBD, it depends on the ratio. You're going to find ratios in products at a dispensary that if you're looking at a CBD product, that's going to be ranging. The ratio is going to be anywhere from, say, a 1-to-1 ratio where you have an equal amount of THC and CBD to where you can get products that have 40-to-1. It's 40 parts CBD and 1 part THC. So there's a huge range of ratios that you can find of CBD to THC, depending on your needs and what works best for you. So that makes a big difference. And the important thing to know too is THC is sort of the scary boogeyman of cannabis, and it really depends on how much you take and how much your body reacts to it. That makes a big difference for you. And the important thing is to feel comfortable with anything that you take. And I don't know how many pharmaceutical products that you're using that your doctors prescribe, but if you're not feeling comfortable using those products, how much control do you have over that? That's a toughie. But when it comes to cannabis products, you have a huge range of products and hemp-based products to be able to use to find the products that work best for you. So that's the important thing is I think that's one of the wonderful things about working in this area is that you as a consumer and looking for healthcare needs have a much greater control over your health and well-being because of the fact that you are basically making the decisions for yourself on what works best for you based on information and education and helpful guidance that we can provide in our industry. So just to know, this is I think an empowering area for you to be able to understand more about for your health and well-being and for your friends and family as well. So I hope that anything you learned today you're going to tell your friends about, because the more that people know, the better off all of us are going to be.
Nice. Oh, yeah, Allie?
And then I'll add to that. So the THC molecule that's sold in the dispensaries, right? And then the CBD molecule in the dispensaries and in the hemp. So we understand that this is a very confusing topic, and there's been a lot of misinformation. Our physicians, unfortunately, aren't told some of the research, and they haven't really gone and delved into the research. And as Tim had mentioned, if you go to PubMed, pubmed.com or .org, actually. It's the repository for all herbal clinical studies, for all medical device clinical studies, for all pharmaceutical clinical studies. So anything that has to do with medicine, if it's a clinical study or a double-blinded randomized controlled study, it's in PubMed. And when I started in 2015, there were like 28,000 articles to date on cannabis, marijuana, the endocannabinoid system. Today, there are probably triple that. And in 2016, CBD became the molecule of, wow, what's that? And so I want to just say, the research shows that we have these things in our body called gene expressions. So somebody may have a blip on their DNA and they have a cancer expression, but it doesn't get expressed, it doesn't get turned on until there's either too high of a toxic load or there's some stressor to the body. Could be grief, could be a chemical, could be, a trauma or some sort of a chemical load that's too high. When that gene expression turns on, then we get cancer, or we get pain, or we get inflammation, or we get, MS or something like that. So CBD will turn on or turn off almost 2,000 gene expressions in the body. Huge. THC, about 36. Okay, so the physicians that I work with, the researchers that I work with CBD because it's actually turning on these pathways in the body. Pain, perception to pain, nervous system, endocrine system. There's a million different things. In fact, when COVID began, the physician that I work with came out with 25 different mechanisms of action that CBD allows to keep the COVID virus out of your cells. Okay, so we actually have an immune system that keeps pathogens out of our cells. And CBD happens to be one of those nutrients. So there's a ton of information out there. It's just a very deep dive, and we don't expect any of you to go to PubMed and learn these things because they're, words and things that you will never understand. But the data is out there, and if you have a physician who you want to use CBD and your doctor doesn't want you to, I'd be happy to talk to them. So my phone number is back there. I always am interested in educating.
Wow, okay. Well, in preparing for today, because I didn't know what I didn't know, which I don't know much about this, I started kind of looking at CBD and THC, and I wanted you both, we'll start with you, Tim, to dive into the benefits. So the benefits that I read about included pain, which is what kind of led me to this topic for my mom, inflammation, stress, anxiety, sleep. I've not had good night's sleep the last couple nights, and maybe it's because last weekend I came from Hawaii, and the weekend before I was 3 hours the other way in Ohio, and I'm all messed up. Skin and overall wellness. So Tim, if you want to address, start out with the benefits for all of those issues, and then I also want to talk about, are there any risks involved? So Tim, and then Allie, if you want to add to that.
Sure. Yeah. So, all of those conditions that Dayna was talking about are the primary reasons why people come to my dispensary and look for help. Pain is a big one. Appetite is another one for cancer folks who are dealing with that. Sleep is always a big issue for a lot of folks, and related to that is going to be anxiety. So those are sort of the biggest ones that we have. But pain for a lot of folks, they have chronic pain. They've been on pain medications for years in a lot of cases, and they find that it's just not working for them. So that's one of the great things that CBD and THC helps The combination, again, of the two is a really important combination. So, especially for pain. So that's one of the main things that people come to us for. For appetite, that's also a very gratifying thing for me to be able to talk to customers who are needing appetite help. We're able to find specific flowers for them. Because every kind of plant that is grown by the growers can have much different molecular and cannabinoid content. The terpenes that are in that is a whole other subject that is to be talked about. Those are the smells that actually have an effect on your health. And that's a big component of cannabis and hemp as well. So all of those things, we're able to look for specific flowers that work best for that customer. So based on their experience that they tell us. So pain is another, that's a big one as well. And for pain, that could be used in a whole different, all different types of forms of products too. So I'm not sure, I know that's going to be coming up on our question list here. So I'll refrain from that now that I think about it. So, but yeah, anxiety is another one. CBD is great for dealing with anxiety. For a lot of folks, that's been a huge one for the last several years, not to mention all the other benefits that come with using those cannabinoids. But for anxiety, that in turn often affects your sleep. You wake up in the middle of the night because you're worrying about one thing or another, which is completely understandable. But that in turn can also often lead to sleeplessness. So that's another really great feature of cannabinoid therapy for that, for sleep. And just overall wellness in general. For myself, I started using, after I learned about my niece and learned more about cannabis for wellness, I started using a high CBD product. It was like a 20-to-1 ratio product, especially after I joined Octavia Wellness and started getting my employee discount. That was even a better deal. So, but I went from using, my old job that I had was somewhat physical, plus I'm a musician, so I was playing actively in a band, and I would get, at my age, I started getting a little arthritic feelings in my hands, and I was using Advil every day. I was taking anywhere from 4 to 6 Advil a day, depending on what I was doing. So after I started using CBD, I realized I didn't need to take Advil at all. In fact, it made a huge difference in my health. I used to get migraines about every quarter. It wasn't anything like a lot of the folks I've talked to who have migraines that knock them out for days at a time. But for mine, it was still a day of misery, and I would have to take a whole bunch of Advil and some other stuff to try to knock that down, and I'd take a long nap and feel terrible after I woke up. So I didn't get those migraines any longer. So there was something to that I just wasn't anticipating. There were so many other things too. I actually lost weight as a result, which was a little concerning to me at first.